Hi, and welcome to Unmasking the Trans Movement with John Euler. I'm your host, Brad Wilder. Today on the show, John and Ute Heggen sit down to discuss the results of groundbreaking research into the harm that sexually deviant, cross-dressing, unfaithful trans husbands actually cause. There's a lot to unpack in this two-part episode. Part 1 is coming up right after this. ExposingSoji123.com provides all the info you'll need to protect your children and family from this transgender ideology. ExposingSoji123.com has done all the work for you to take a stand and be heard. With dozens of letters, pre-written to every official you can think of within your province, the documents provided are fill in the blank so you can amend and send. It's that simple. Make your voice heard and count for the children to the highest levels of provincial and so-called federal political leaders, health ministers, school board officials, and more. ExposingSoji123.com, where the facts are real. Welcome back to Unmasking the Trans Movement with John Euler. I'm Brad Wilder. Today, John Euler sits down with Ute Heggen. This is part 1 in a two-part series where they discuss groundbreaking results and research into the harm that sexually deviant, cross-dressing, unfaithful trans husbands cause. Let's bring in John and Ute right now into the program. Thank you very much for being here, both of you. There's a lot to unpack with all of this, isn't there, John?
Brad, thank you. And it is great to have back with us for another return visit, Ute Heggen. Ute, thank you so much for being back. We look forward to jumping right into the research, but you and I were talking prior to recording. You have so much going on. You have a channel that you were just on Jordan Peterson's wife. Is it Kathy?
Tammy Peterson's, yeah.
I'm sorry,
Tammy
that's right.
Peterson.
Tammy Peterson's program.
Yes.
So let's talk about that, because that was a wonderful opportunity for you to be able to share the challenges of women who have been betrayed by sexually deviant men. Mm-hmm. You used the term trans widows, also grass widows. You used that term before.
Yes.
But it was a really good opportunity for you to help start educating people on the real survivors of all this. You know, the deviant men have been effective in trying to flip the script and get all the sympathies, when in fact they're the ones that have caused all this carnage as far as the emotional damage and actual damage to families. So tell us about what brought that opportunity about, how the channel, and tell people where they can find you. Let's start with that.
Yes. So my YouTube channel is 4 words, Trans Widow Ute Heggen. And even if you just look up Ute Heggen, that comes up. So UTE and then HEGGEN, which is a pseudonym. Of course, almost all of us have to use a pseudonym because of the aggression of the trans allies and the ex-husbands. And in fact, just yesterday, there was an interview of the filmmaker, Vaishnavi Sundar, whose documentary about trans widows she's nearing completion. She's worked for about 1.5 years now on profiling 18 of us, and I think 5 of us had to she made animation, because these 5 didn't want their faces to be on the screen. Now I am with my face on the screen and a pseudonym, and there are maybe 2 of us from her film that are using their own names, older women, but all of the younger women are afraid they're going to lose their job, despite the fact that, a high proportion of the younger ex-wives have actually been sexually assaulted by the lingerie wearing husband before she got out. And
that's going to come out in the research you're going to share with us that you've been doing. But that's the first thing That's one of the primary things that I really want to emphasize, so do you, as far as the nature of these deviant men and those that are advocating for their allies, that they are amazingly and uniquely aggressive. They're like piranhas. They're like barracudas.
Well, and I think that there's some kind of, subconscious working there. They really loathe, secretly loathe their own mother somehow, and
this could be made.
And I think that they are. This is an attempt to have a do-over with whatever was ruinous from their childhood and stuff like that.
And certainly all these guys are into pornography. So pornography creates a deep malevolence toward women. And that's why these guys think it's a reasonable thing to grab women by the throat.
The number of times that, I count that differently. I count the physical assault different from the sexual assault. And then there's the sexual coercion, which unfortunately, what I experienced too was coercion from a person who called herself a therapist. And she was trying to convince me, this was back in the 1990s when I experienced my now ex-husband's, trip down the rabbit hole. And at that time, kink was somehow becoming accepted, or there was this movement to this BDSM, bondage, sadomasochism, something. I can't even,
all the details.
So foreign to me,
50
right?
Shades of Grey, kind of.
Right. And I never watched that show. I was, but it was just off-putting, and women should never, ever even agree verbally ahead of time to this kind of thing, because, for example, one of the women, in answering my survey of 20 questions to ask a trans widow, she said that, she tried, she pretended to be the male in bed with her lingerie wearing now ex-husband, and she had a C-section scar, so that then that there's a kid in the house, right, sleeping, we think, and they're engaging in this, these sexual pretend role play things, and this is I think Tracy Shannon, who I admire so much, she talked about this too, being coerced into this and being told by therapists, well, this is what now you're a lesbian, or now you're, it's like, well, and then there's this whole thing about, consenting adults behind closed doors and stuff like that. And I remember sitting there with this person that in my book, in the Curated
There we
Woods,
go. I'm glad you're
my memoir,
right.
from I Universe, in the Curated
book.
Woods, True Tales from a Grass Widow. I called her Ruth the Charlatan, because this is the other thing that has happened is individuals who actually have no credentials got into advising these guys like my ex-husband. And I don't know if I ever told you this. Like, I asked him, how did you find her? Like, how did you find this person, to go to? Because she was very open with me that she's the wife of a doctor, and basically she regards that as her credential. And so, like, you're the advertiser. I guess your husband, the doctor, is an endocrinologist, and he's giving these men estrogen or something, like, that's called something else, a con artist or something. And so, she basically somehow denigrated the procreative sex that I and my husband had, and was like, well, aren't you bored? Don't you want to try
Isn't it something?
Yeah, and
it's
it was
amazing to think that the only position in sex that allows eye-to-eye contact, if the eyes are the window of the soul,
yeah,
they call that vanilla, and they degrade it and denigrate it, as you say.
Yeah.
Right.
And
it's anything to depersonalize
right
the most
female.
intimate of experiences two human beings, a husband and wife can have.
And to denigrate what the female sexual response is, and sort of minimize it, right? And so I said to her was, I was a dancer for 14 years. I was in the dance studio with a lot of beautiful female bodies, people from the Joffrey Ballet, people from women mostly, because in dance it's more women than men, and the Paul Taylor Company and so on and so on. This is back in the 1980s in New York City, and I had worked my way up. I was trying to get into this particular modern dance company, but then my feet gave out, and I was in my late 20s. I was already married, so I said, time to have kids, right? That's the next thing to do. But I told her, I wasn't attracted to those women, right? Like I admire anyone who has, great physique and coordination and dances beautifully or does sports or something beautifully. But, I was not sexually attracted to this group of sort of the most beautiful female bodies in the world, right? and of course, most of the guys were gay. So I wasn't dancing because I wanted to like fool around or something and be unfaithful in my marriage. Not at all. And then, she apparently wasn't expecting that. She was expecting me to acquiesce and to say, okay, what store do I go to? Right. She actually referenced the stores for the sex toys. Right. She said, well, you can go to this place and you could, and the thing is, but I'm circling back to this, a certain sex toy, which is called a strap-on, which is a poor mimic of the penis. Okay. That apparently anyone can put on, strap on to their body. And so this one trans widow who had answered my 20 questions in my survey said that during trying to please her husband and make this work, the strap-on injured her C-section scar. Okay, so I'm saying to myself, okay, let's extrapolate this whole strap-on thing. Like, if it's two women, if lesbians are doing this, they're two women, right? They are probably likely to be the same weight or the same structure, right? It's not a male body and a female body, right? But she was engaging in this, where the husband was pretending to be the woman, right? But then he got excited and aroused, and then he's like pumping underneath her, I guess, and did too much, and it injured her C-section scar, and so But I'm saying to myself, okay, I just think that this is possibly injurious to anyone, male or female, right? Anyone who is putting something on their midsection and it's, not soft. Okay. So this whole idea that, kink shaming or something, that's so bad.
We should be shaming it, quite frankly.
Yes,
right? Because it's sexual deviance. And it's a guy then wanting to have gay sex.
Yeah.
That's all that is.
And you're asking a woman to pretend that she's a gay man.
Right? How warped.
Yes. It's very injurious to your psyche.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Talk about the elephant in the middle of the room. It's exactly what we're talking about. that we're forcing, this whole concept minimizes anything about the woman and her feelings. She becomes subservient. It's all about the guy. Well, the guys are selfish anyways. They're a bunch of selfish pigs, in my estimate. That's my clinical assessment.
Well, yeah, I mean, it
is because no normal woman wants this. She didn't sign up for this, especially talking about wives. They were thinking they'd married normal guys. And all of a sudden, their world is changing. They're just trying to keep their marriage together. And then they go to this setup between the deviant husband, the unfaithful husband that's obviously into gay stuff. So he's already betrayed his marital vows. He's heavily involved in pornography. Then it's a setup because he finds a therapist that is going to supposedly convince his wife to go along with this.
And this is the thing, they're not telling the therapists the real truth. The wives stopped going. Some of us, like Tracy, went together with him. I didn't go together with my husband, but some, are coerced into going together. And then, this whole sex role play stuff is presented as if it is just a variation. It's a between two consenting adults variation of lovemaking. Okay. And now, I mean, there are two they call themselves former escorts. It's very interesting, to be out there, at least under my WordPress blog is Ute Heggen Grass Widow. It's a mouthful, but Ute Heggen Grass Widow.wordpress.com. And so that's how people contact me. There's a contact form because I don't put my email out just to anyone, but that's how you contact me. And actually, this was an interesting dilemma that I had, kind of made a snap decision about it. A woman whose husband recently started openly doing this and going out in public dressed as a woman and stuff. And she contacted me through the WordPress blog and said, please send me your survey. I want to answer them. I'm a trans widow. And I am locked in a room in our house. And he just came back from his going out that I refused to participate in. And I'm locking myself, to be safe. And I said to her, I might start a different data set, but I can't have you participate in our data because you haven't left. And I'm going to tell you that when you're finally sleeping or something, he is going to check on your computer and check on your phone and find me and find my group and so on. And I think you're not safe. And I just advise you to get legal advice and call your relatives and find a way to get out. And she didn't tell me whether they have children or anything. I think I felt bad saying this to her, but basically, if you have not left, I kind of can't help you.
Well, and that shows increased validity on your part. Your heart goes out to this gal. And how many times is this being replicated on a daily basis now that all these guys are going deviant because of all the porn?
Yeah.
But it's to your credit, then, you really do have a screening process to keep the data, the outcomes, which you're going to get. It's to your credit. I mean, that increases validity and reliability because of the method that you're using. Ute, do you want to, and I encourage people to go back and review the most recent episode that we did because you went line item by line line item through your survey. But if you want to
Yes.
give just a very quick run through of the questions to
Okay.
bring people up to
Yeah,
speed.
because now we have 54 of us, and additionally, there are 34 children of the 50, actually 53 of us. I'm waiting on a couple. There are a couple more coming in.
That is a good sample size.
Yeah,
53.
I think so. 53. It's more than the Dutch study that they're basing giving out Lupron to the kids, to the teens, to stop puberty.
Right, and you're not only collecting, actual data as far as details, but then you're going to be able to bring a thematic study,
right?
To this as well.
Pattern.
So it's both qualitative and quantitative.
Yes.
Assessment. Right. So,
and I believe
sample
that
size.
This is the only data in the world, and I plan to keep on collecting this for all of my active life. Let's say I have, if I'm lucky, 25 years left. I'm 66 now. My mother lived to 100, so I'm hoping, but yeah.
So give us a quick rundown. Remind us what the questions are.
Yes, I'll just quick go through the questions. So now, So I was just talking about the kids. This isn't I don't ask specifically, but women do mention when they have children. Of 34 children, 7, including my older son, had suicidal ideation after their father did this. And so I consider that to be rather high rate. I mean, that's, and no one's collecting any data on the kids. And then of those 7 who expressed suicidal ideation, the serious kind, where it's like 3 different ways that they say they wanted to kill themselves. And, it's like serious in the school. They heard, the teacher heard it, and they make you go to a, therapy and stuff like that, which my ex-husband refused to participate in. None of the guys, none of the men, even after, so 7 children of the 34 children of the 53 of us trans widows, 7 of them serious suicidal ideation, where the method or the different methods that they're thinking about, and 4, not my son, but 4 of the 7 then tried to kill themselves and had to be hospitalized.
Had active attempts.
Yeah.
This is crucial.
And none of those fathers participated in any of the follow-up psychotherapy. None of them. And the psychologists and psychiatrists and surgeons and whoever else, they all want to blame us. It's because we didn't have a good reaction. The moms didn't have a good reaction. And so that's what, they willfully, want the blinders on. They don't want to know. And I honestly believe that there are probably many, many more children of cross-dressing men who have had to be hospitalized because of a suicide attempt. And the hospitals are not keeping track at all about this parental history. They'll take a history of, is either of your parents a drug addict? Is either of your parents da-da-da-da-da? There's all kind of questions that they have to ask, because then the kid might really be able to succeed, if there's drugs in the house or something like this, right? So, and it's just so amazing to me, because they use the suicide narrative as their justification. That this person is not going to live long if I don't castrate him. Okay. That is their justification. And what the other thing that I'm watching too is the detransitioner stories. I think there are thousands of detransitioners who have mutilated bodies, who live with regret and live with, the Swedish study from 2011 found that women who, got mastectomies and did all that stuff because they thought they should be male in Sweden, the happy socialist country, Sweden, where they have what's called hygge, coziness, right? Women who went through this process of trying to become a man, and had the procedures between 1973 and 2003, and the study was conducted on death records in 2011. Women who so-called transitioned during that time period were 40 times more likely to have died by suicide, because it was a study of death records. So the researchers didn't have to get like all this kind of permission and stuff, because they just went through the death records. And now we're having all these places where you can change your birth certificate. Like it's all this really superfluous stuff of changing data, right? I will only be a real opposite sex person if I change my birth certificate, which is basically a sin against your mother, right?
And it's a perfect way for sex offenders, quite frankly, to avoid and evade. If you can change your ID, self-ID, right, then you're not on the registry anymore.
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah. Yeah. And so it's just, there's so many layers of the onion here that we're unpeeling. So you wanted me to go through this. So, my first question was cross-dressing a revelation or your discovery? Did he tell you it's under control, not frequent, and then it escalated out of control? So, again, the honesty, right? So 53 of us, 26. He said, "Oh, I just do this once in a while, and it's under control," right? And then it escalated out of control. So that's basically half, right? So half.
Yeah, you're going to be able to derive the more who participate. So we're encouraging any woman whose husband has demonstrated that he's now deviant. He's into this cross-dressing stuff. And I want to tell women, as a therapist, you don't need to tolerate any of this.
No,
you should not tolerate any of this.
Because what I'm finding,
right, if it goes against your moral values,
the pattern of their violence is too dangerous. It's too dangerous for any woman.
As well as it's a psychological insult.
It's very damaging.
Upon the psyche that here a woman thinks she's marrying a guy, and all of a sudden, right, he's turning deviant on her. And
it's sort of like, for all these years, for 30 years, people were saying to me, "Oh, well, so you had a bad divorce. There are these horrible men who they take their, ex-wife through the mill, they're wife beaters, whatever, and then they have money. So da. And, but that's your ex-husband is the exception, basically. And this is just not true based on my data. Nobody's keeping any data. And the whole entire mental health field doesn't know because they willfully don't want to know. These guys don't go in to their psychologist or psychiatrist that they're in their nice outfit, and the person says, "Oh, well, you did a nice job with your fingernail color, your polish, and those shoes, they make your feet look really female, not they don't really look like size 13, it's like." So the thing is, so it's this whole collusion that the people in the mental health field are doing. And then that guy who last week strangled his wife almost to death isn't going to happen to mention that. And there's I actually reached out to a bunch of gender critical people, Helen Joyce and Maya Forstater and everything. And I said, "Listen, there's a trans widow who contacted me over in the UK, and she needs legal help because she had proof. She had photographs of the bruises on her neck, and she sought medical help and law enforcement on the night that it happened. He tried to strangle her to death. infant present in the home. She is just like 3 weeks postpartum. And then he raped her. She ran out on the street with her infant barefoot. And now, a few months later, the police came knocking on her mother's door where she is harboring and told her, we don't have enough evidence to charge him. And she's freaking out because she thinks that he's going to do it to another woman, which he might. Of course. Right. And it's like, and so the police don't want to touch these cases with a 10-foot pole, because the ACLU or the whoever it is over there in the UK, they will start riots. They will. These guys are very violent. It's really quite proven how violent they are with any of the Kelly J. Keene standing for women, let women speak, her events. These dudes are very violent. They pretend that this is about race. It just goes immediately over into race. Like, so, I mean, I don't know how long you want to go in this segment, and then now I haven't even, read all of my questions but this is the thing is like, actually, this is what I'm going to do is I'm just going to jump to some of the significant questions,
let's do this in the interest of time so that we can do this in a methodical fashion. And all this has been so important, and people need to understand, well, there's so many takeaways, even from this first episode. The level of manipulation of these guys knows no bounds. Yeah. They manipulate their partner. They manipulate the spouse to be a trans widow, presupposes you're married to the guy. So they know how to play mind games. They know how to hide what they're really doing. They know how to gaslight. So they make the spouse believe that they are crazy. They find confirmation in terms of finding these therapists that'll go along with and support deviance, and they make the normal spouse, the wife, feel like she's a crazy one, to break her down, to break down her boundaries.
And literally, I have had qualified people, like medical doctors, a psychiatrist, a PhD psychologist, very qualified people say to me, well, your ex-husband is the exception. And I'm like, you know what? Actually, the way in which my ex-husband is the exception is that he didn't choke me. And, this is interesting. Like, so someone contacted me. Actually, it was a comment underneath my profile. I call the pen name of this woman that I just spoke of. I profile them on my channel and give them a pen name. A lot of them are Shakespearean, like Portia and Ophelia and stuff like that. This one is Anya Leave. And so after I had profiled her and said this, and no one got back to me, by the way, I contacted directly, some of these organizations and said, there is a woman, can you please email me back? Because there is a woman who needs legal advice, legal representation, because the police said that they will not prosecute this strangulation and this rape. And so I was saying he choked her because that's, the colloquial. But then someone commented, and I was like, this is important, because choking typically is if you swallow something too big and you're choking, you can't breathe, you're, internally. But when it's someone doing this to you, that's strangulation.
There we go.
He attempted to kill her by strangulation.
That's right.
And the thing is, like, these guys, they don't know. And there's this guy who's called Sophie Baker or something over there in the UK who really should be in jail. Who I can't remember what his actual name is, but he should just be in jail for life, because he imprisoned and I think raped a young man and kept him, like, what do you call it? It's like kidnapping and kind of kept him as like a sex slave, right?
Right.
And he served some time in jail and now is identifying as a woman and got out of jail. Like he should not be out there in society.
They're working the system. They're working the system.
Right. And he actually got hauled back because he said something publicly about punch a turf in the head or something like this, a turf being TERF, trans exclusionary radical feminist.
It's a woman that's basically wanting to have boundaries. So these guys are publicly saying they'll assault these women. And
I've had even trolls on my channel who have threatened me, and I realized I should actually, like, I just typically block them completely. They can't make a comment on my channel, but I thought maybe I should keep track of what they're saying, and because I am writing a second book, and it's going to be called Trans Widow Chronicles, Leaving and Healing, because that's your only choice. There are a few organizations that try to help women like me, except there's one now called Our Path. It used to be called Straight Spouses Network, and they were going to have me do a podcast for them, but then they said I'm too radical, like, because I say
radical to have boundaries and
right.
Say if you're going to be married,
and they're also helping the women who stay, and it's like the women who stay don't want to stay. Like, why? This is the thing: is these it's very shocking, actually, to think about how a psychiatrist or a psychologist or any kind of medical doctor or whatever is going to not understand the ramifications. I mean, first of all, it did used to be so rare. Now it's social contagion, and it is not so rare, and they're trying to recruit children into this. but we were isolated, we were very, very isolated, and most people sort of put us into the category of, women whose husbands decided they were gay. Right. And so, that was like, there was a little peak, I think, of that in the late 80s and 1990s, when coming out of the closet was beginning to be celebrated and stuff. So I actually, like, my oldest sister's best friend the guy was a minister. And she was a minister's wife, right? And then he comes out as gay, right? After 20 years of marriage, 3 kids, whatever, but, and, but the thing is, a lot of those guys are, they're at least respectful of their wife, and they realize that they broke their marriage vows, and they really deceived her. And they're much more, typically, they're humble about that, they were deceptive and deceitful, whatever. And so, but the like the attitude, for example, of Ray Blanchard is no one. He's said this. Like, I have a quote. He's the one who did the Blanchard Protocol, 2 years of cross-dressing and keeping your job. That was a big thing, keeping your job. Like, because, and the thing is, no one seems to be reading between the lines except me, because keeping your job.
We'll look forward to part 2.
Full out cokehead or something like.
That's right. And we're hoping to.
I'm just going to tell you.
We're hoping to get him on the program. We're going to
really. Have you been reaching out?
We're going to have a panel that's going to discuss some of the issues in the DSM-5.
Well, this is, so he says no one can, understand this thing. No one. It's just so unique, and he's trying to sanitize it, basically,
right,
and not call it what you are honestly calling it, which is deviance.
It's just sexual deviance.
And,
let's stop right there. We're up against time, and then we will pick it up here momentarily on the part 2.
Yeah, very good.
Well, thank you. And Brad, thank you as always. Ute is a wealth of information. We say that time and time again about our guests, but this is, she as nobody knows this subject, unfortunately, because she's had to live it. So Ute, thank you. And we'll look forward to part 2.